Okay, hello guys. Well, speaking to you from the UK, of course, momentous events going on, and I have a lot to say, so I'm going to get to it rather quickly. Just going to check that the sound's all working okay, because you know how annoying that is when you record it and then the sound's all dud. So, anyway, where were we? I actually rang in to George Galloway's show tonight, so if you want to listen to the call, I think it was quite interesting. I think it was just the beginning of the second hour. The phone lines went down in the middle, so I was kind of truncated, but then they called me back, so I finished my call. I think it was quite interesting. So, Rishi Sunak is most likely to be the new UK Prime Minister. Now, as you know, I did put out a prediction saying that I didn't think Boris would be successful, even though he was flying back and everything like that. And that appears to be right. But I am rather surprised at the turn of events. For example, I'm watching Sky News just 10 minutes ago. First time I've tuned in ages, because I never watch that sort of stuff, but just to see what they were saying. And they said, well, he raced back, he'd set up a campaign committee, he was getting all organised, he got the 102 nominations, but he's backing out because he can't unite the party. Isn't Boris the only one who can unite the party? He does have a mandate. He's an election winner. It's the majority of people that voted for him. The Conservative Party voters and the base wanted him. They didn't really want the choice between Sunak and Truss. They wanted him. And then they voted for Truss, and they're going to feel that they've, been stabbed in the back because they've got rid of their preferred candidate not once but twice. And they foisted on the person they didn't want, Rishi Sunak, who presumably they see as a globalist, which he absolutely is. So I don't think it's true. I think that, bearing in mind my chart reading for Boris, there's something else going on, some sort of dirt they had on him, and someone had a quiet word in his ear today, and they said, out, mate. You're not running this, don't have any hopes of this, it's going to be Sunak, right? So I know that I said between Ben Wallace, I was edging towards Ben Wallace over Sunak, but look, both Toryans, had kind of similar stuff going on. Not too worried about that. We didn't have the time for them, so the charts were quite incomplete. But I do find it interesting. I think Boris has been edged out. But looking at Boris's chart, he's going to be out for revenge. And that's why I see that the Tory party are going to be irrevocably split. When they say that Boris couldn't unite the party, they're talking in opposites, because now it's split. The MPs are totally cut off from the base. The Tory members wanted Boris. They voted for him. They wanted him on the ballot between Truss and Sunak. They never wanted him gone. Boris actually being ousted was a coup. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm no longer a Boris fan. I believe he was the architect of his own demise by tearing up the manifesto on the first day and bringing in net zero and pushing this war and backing Zelensky. Didn't like any of that. But the point is, a lot of Conservative voters still are emotionally invested in Boris. He's the only one with charisma that could have united the party. A wet blanket like Sunak or Starmer, these people are one and the same. We've seen one globalist, seen them all, right? I heard Piers Corbyn, not Jeremy, and he was on with Harrison Ford on InfoWars talking about just stop oil and everything, and he said he wouldn't be surprised if there's a Sunak-Starmer government of national unity, which I wouldn't rule out. But as you know, I've been saying it's going to all wind up in a general election, either in January or being announced in January. Now, when I said this to George, he said to me that although he agreed with what I was saying on the premise, he said turkeys don't vote for Christmas, MPs have to vote for a general election, and there's no way they'd vote to lose their seats. I take a totally different stance, because I say that, first of all, it's going to be so difficult. The Conservatives are out of ideas, they're out of steam, they're out of momentum, and I think maybe they are cowardly to face what's coming. They've circulated the cabinet so many times, they've run out of talent, there's no one else that they can thrust forward. To be honest, we're probably going to be stuck with Hunt as the as Chancellor of the Exchequer. No one likes him in the Tory party. I doubt anyone in Labour like him. Another reason why the public are going to become very, very restless. The media were the people who launched this coup. They were the ones that sat on those photographs that they had of Johnson at the lockdown parties for a year, until the time was right to sort of bring these into the public domain, to demonise Boris and to unravel this campaign of hate to get rid of him. It was a coup. Just as I said at the beginning of the year, the April Ingress chart for the UK was so similar to the French and Russian revolutions. We are having a kind of coup/revolution at the moment. The leader that had the mandate and that people voted for is gone. They voted again, the members for Truss are gone, and they've had a candidate now foisted upon them, and the leader everyone wants was forced to step down. It is some sort of coup. Now, the media aren't going to stop here. They, like sharks, they're going to smell blood in the water. They know that the Tory party now are irrevocably split. The MPs are split from the membership. They split down the line. You've got the Boris loyalists who know that Sunak was basically the architect of Boris's destruction, and they are going to be out for revenge, as is Boris, because a politician, hell hath no fury, as a politician scorned. From Boris Johnson's chart, he's going to now not go away quietly, right? He's going to be working in the background, and I don't think the Tories are going to be so much infighting now, they won't care if the whole thing collapses and Labour come in. And of course the media would rather have a Labour government with Starmer, with Nicola Sturgeon, all working together, so they are going to carry on piling on the Aggie. I think what with the war in Ukraine, what with the dire economic situation, which cannot get better while we have these self-defeating sanctions about Ukraine, things are going to go from bad to worse until, as I've said, in January, there's going to be this inevitable crash in the economy, crash of the pound, the pensions, it's all going to go to pot. And then there's going to have to be a general election or some sort of government of national unity, as Piers Corbyn suggested, Starmer and Sunak, or a general election. There's no way this isn't going to the polls, because a party divided, as the Tories are now going to be, cannot stand. If the press are telling you he's the unity candidate, wrong. How can that possibly be? Where's the unity after everything he's done to usher himself in? Not forgetting, there was plenty going on with Sunak, with his wife, the furlough cash, the conflict of interest when he was Chancellor of the banking community. And he was at those lockdown parties too, So it won't be very difficult for the press to pile on dirt on him until we reach this crescendo of outrage, driven by the media. Most of the public are going to be angry, both the Tories, the Labours, everyone's going to be angry. Where does it all end? So I'm still sticking, despite what George says, to my prediction of a general election. And and I think things are just going to get crazier in the Tory party. Now, my other prediction for the 25th of this month, I said there's a solar eclipse conjunct Venus in Scorpio, and it's quite tight. I mean, this has repeated, solar eclipses, conjunct Venus in Scorpio for the last 100 years. But the time when it was closest was in 1938. I think it was early November 1938. As we know, that was before World War II broke out the next year. I feel this week we are going to see an escalation in Ukraine. Well, I don't have to predict that. We know now. I made the prediction of the said a while ago, this round the 25th is going to be a major time for the conflict escalating in Ukraine, and now we know it's true. The Russians have mobilized forces. They are massing tanks to go into Kherson. There's been a concerted bombing campaign on infrastructure in Ukraine. In Russia, they have now got something called the Special Council, and this involves, like I would call it, a ministry of war. What they are doing now is they are marshalling all the country's resources, industrial, technological, and economic, towards war. They have moved to a war footing. Now, a friend wrote to me and she said, why China still having these lockdowns? Isn't it defeatist for the economy? Why are they locking people down? Why are they closing factories? Why are they closing towns? Because China are also moving to a wartime economy. They're not so worried about supplying America and Europe because they understand through what their communications with Russia that there's going to be a breakdown. So they're moving to a wartime economy. So the Duran did a very interesting broadcast on that today, where they explain in more detail what's going on with Russia. I think Ukraine started with about 250,000 soldiers. They're down to about 50,000 now. They don't really have a fighting force. They don't have air cover. When the West talk to you about Russian forces crumbling, it's a lot of nonsense. There's about 2,500 American troops in Romania ready to go in. I say this will be the week when, in time and history, when they look back, will be the start of World War II. Simply because Russia are now going to up their game, make the move, and take more territory or consolidate in Ukraine. The West cannot lose face, so they're going to have to counter in some way. I'll come back to that. So we can see there's this escalation. Something else they said on the Duran, which I don't remember at the moment, but basically everything in new people are getting brought in. They're gearing up in Russia. And when people say Russians don't support the war, well, a lot of Russians don't think they've gone hard enough, right? At the end of the day, Ukraine will probably no longer exist as a country, and it'll all be the fault of the West, what they've done to it through pushing this and not seeking peaceful options. Now, we're all anticipating an absolute rout in America in the Congress and Senate. Paul Ryan has said that if the Republicans control the Senate, no more money to Zelensky. Will he stick to it? We don't really know. But already the Democrats and the Marco Rubios and all the neocons are already making sure that Zelensky gets 50,000 before the swearing in of the new Senate and Congress members in January. They think that'll last him a year. The way he's burning through that money is only going to last him till April. Most of it is just being laundered, as we know. It's not going to any effort to help anyone, the people in Ukraine at all. So it'll be interesting. So if America do have a dead, well, Biden, I think Biden will be out before New Year. Something will happen over the Christmas period, and that'll be the end of Biden, because as soon as the Republicans get in, they want to start bringing action, impeachment proceedings against Biden and stuff against Hunter Biden. But I'm sure they can be persuaded not to do that if Biden sort of steps down between the Christmas New Year period, or, you know, if he suddenly has a health setback, which I think will happen. So we'll go into the new year with no Biden. Don't know who will take over. But one thing for sure is America are going to be less engaged in this war, which is going to leave Britain, not France, who are going to pull out. I wouldn't be even surprised if France leave NATO, and maybe Poland. So whoever is the unfortunate person to be prime minister is going to be left holding the can for this conflict in Ukraine that the NATO people and the European people are still pushing for. But you can't fight a war without an industrial base. The UK no longer has an industrial base. Germany's industrial base is extremely weakened because of the Nord Stream and the lack of fuel, and the fact that Nigeria, and I think it was some other country, but it was Nigeria, refused to send Europe liquid natural gas. Saudi are refusing to send oil. Algeria refused to send oil to France. The media constantly tell you that Putin is isolated, but the truth is it's Europe that are isolated. Countries in Africa and the so-called third world or the developing world do not want to help Europe out with their energy crisis. And America are shipping over liquid natural gas, yes, at 4 times the price of what it is in America, and it's all very slow, and Germany don't even have the infrastructure to receive it at the port. So you can see Europe are in a lot of trouble. They are not in a position to get all gung-ho with Ursula von der Leyen and fight against Russia. So Russia understand this is their time. Looked at various charts for Russia. I mean, I'm afraid things look strong for them, and things look strong for China. Things look very desperate here. That's why I don't know if Sunak really has a clue of what's going on, if he actually wants this, but I assume he is the candidate they've been wanting to shoe in all along. But as I say, I don't think it's going to last. But as I say, the UK, Germany and other countries are already running short of armaments to send to Ukraine. But it's going to be very difficult, given power shortages and other shortages, supply chain issues, and the lack of industrial base, to be able to manufacture enough to keep a war going. So I can see strength in Russia, and while I'm talking about some sort of world war, yes, there will be some sort of conflict, but in the West, unfortunately, from a weakened position, because it's just harebrained, this whole thing. So anyway, yeah, so what I'm saying is there has been a coup. The candidate that the Tory members wanted, that the public voted for, has been got rid of twice now. And I know loads of people very excited that Boris was heading back to the UK and really wanted him back in. And I think he wanted to be back in. But obviously, so there's been a word in here, like, Boris, we've got stuff on you. And they have. From his chart, he's been reckless and whatever. But I do see him not taking this lying down, as Sunak stabbed him in the back. So he will return the favour in some way through his influence in the Tory party. But the party is now split. And as I say, we're heading for a general election. One thing I must say as well, I made a prediction here that this coalition between Giorgia Meloni, Silvio Berlusconi and Matteo Salvini is not going to last. Now, we've already seen she gave old Silvio a slapdown, which I'm sure he just loved. I mean, in another context, he probably would have loved a slapdown, but in a political sense, I don't think he took well to her telling him that his pro-Putin views are not wanted and are not acceptable. Because him and Salvini are more pro-Putin, and I think that's more in tune with what the Italian public want. Because maybe the Italian public aren't particularly pro-Putin, but not having a war, having these self-defeating sanctions are obviously better for them. So, I don't see that coalition in Italy working. And a quick update, I'm doing the book, guys. Oh, by the way, I'm on Andrew's show again on Tuesday. It'll probably go out Thursday and Friday. So I'm going to be talking a lot on Andrew's show about the 3 comeback kids. Will Donald Trump be back? Yes. Will Nigel Farage be back? Yes. And his chart looks very, very busy. Okay, next year, which is why I don't expect this like whole election thing to be too far away. I made a prediction for Nigel about, well, before COVID anyway. And I said he would eventually become an MP. So I think there's some chance. Some of you guys asked, you know, if Starmer's no good, who is good? Forget anyone who's in the 2 major parties. Only way anyone who's any good is going to come about is from a Liberty alliance. Now, even George Galloway is saying he'd join with people like Farage, Fox, maybe some others in a Liberty alliance, right? And he says there's enough they can agree on. For example, they can be anti-war, pro-freedom of speech, you know, anti-austerity, keeping energy prices down, you know, just all the sensible stuff that most of you guys who watch my show agree on, right? A Liberty alliance, I would definitely support that. They may not be ideal, but we can't be too picky. Beggars can't be choosers. So, will Donald Trump be back? Yes, but I've got a little bit more to say on that. Will Nigel be back? Looks like it. Will Boris be back? Well, I said no, and it's no. So there you go. And I also wanted to say to you guys, all the legislation that's tabled to be put through Parliament in the next few months, there's no disagreement from Labour, the SNP, or the Lib Dems. So we have a zombie government or a Uni-party. Because this legislation on the books is to do with the Harms Bill, which we know is going to crack down on alternative media, on free speech. It's going to make it so vague where if you hurt anyone's feelings, you know, then they can come after you. We know all about that. There's the Snoopers Charter. There's the crackdown on protesting. France have just passed a law to massively crack down on protesting. But as far as this country goes, we have a Uni-party. Don't for 1 minute think there's anyone currently in our political system that's going to offer you anything. Okay, so we might see some defections between Tory to Labour or Tories to Brexit Party. That could be interesting, but it's gonna stay chaotic, right? So keep watching the space. Woo! So it's like hair raising, but quite interesting. And yeah, so and just wanted to tell you guys all that. Might look at Sunak's chart in more detail. Just really busy this week because I'm trying to do predictions for all the countries. Some of you guys asked about Singapore, Iran. I'm going to try and get as many through possible. I'm going to put them all in a book. But obviously, as you can understand, it's an awful lot of work because some countries I don't know much about, so you would do more research, but I'm trying to put this all together. So, yeah, I really had to race through that. I'll leave you guys the link when I'm on Andrew's show because I'm talking about, like I say, the 3 comeback kids. I'm talking about the American chart in a lot of detail. Hopefully that'll be interesting with some quite interesting predictions as well. Whew, okay. And yes, listen to me on George Galloway's The Mother of All Talk shows tonight where I rung in, and it was a good show in general. And as it always is, I mean, it's like a 90% I like what George has to say, and he delivers it with a lot of passion. And that's what I like. I don't like anything too bland. He's got experience in politics as well, which is good. So, yeah. Anyway, some of you might have heard me on there anyway. Take care, everyone. Have a good Sunday. Have a good week ahead. And let's see what happens.